Welcome to the Airbus A320 communications lesson. The objective of this lesson is to cover the components, indications, and basic operation of the communication systems. You will also learn how to control and monitor these systems using their associated control panels. The communication systems provide external communications via VHF and HF radios, internal communications via the Interphone systems and passenger address system, oral and visual calls notification, communication with ground stations via the ACARS, and recording of noise on the flight deck via the Cockpit Voice Recorder or CVR. Controls and indicators associated with the communication system include radio management panels or RMPs, the audio control panels or ACPs, the RCDR panel, the audio switching selector, the signs panel, and the calls panel. Used to transmit, push-to-talk selectors are located on the side sticks, hand microphones, the INT-RAD switch, and the public address handset. Communications may be received through the loudspeakers and any flight deck headset. The A320 is equipped with 3 VHF radios, VHF 1, 2, and 3. These radios can be operated separately or simultaneously if required. Each radio has a transceiver in the avionics compartment and an antenna located on the fuselage. VHF 1 and VHF 2 are used exclusively for voice communication, while VHF 3 is normally dedicated to the ACARS system. VHF 3 can also be used as an additional radio for voice communications if necessary. Either 1 or 2 HF transceivers may be installed in the avionics compartment. A single HF antenna and tuner is located in the vertical stabilizer. There are 2 RMPs located on the center pedestal, one for the captain and one for the first officer. The RMPs can be used to tune any radio. If one RMP fails, the other can be used as a backup. The on-off switch controls RMP power. Selecting a radio selection key displays the active and standby frequencies for that radio. A green light illuminates next to the selected key. The dual rotary knobs are used to change the standby frequency. The outer knob controls the digits to the left of the decimal point. The inner knob controls the digits to the right of the decimal point. The transfer key is used to transfer the frequency displayed in the standby window to the active frequency window. Note that the frequency displayed in the standby window moves to the active window. Also notice that the new active frequency is displayed in the first officer's active window. This is because both RMP radio selection keys are selected to the same radio. Although any RMP can tune any radio, Airbus considers each RMP dedicated to a particular set of radios. When an RMP is selected to a non-dedicated radio, the cell light illuminates on both RMPs. In this example, RMP2 is being used to tune VHF 1, so the cell lights are illuminated on both RMPs. Some aircraft are equipped with HF radios. Similar to tuning a VHF radio, tuning an HF radio requires selecting the appropriate HF radio selection key, using the dual rotary knobs to select a frequency, and pressing the transfer key to move it to the active window. For HF radios, the HF radio antenna must be tuned by pressing a push-to-talk selector. A tone is briefly heard, confirming the antenna tuning. The AM key provides amplitude modulation during HF communications. When the AM key is selected off, no green light, only HF single sideband is available. The Audio Control Panel, or ACP, is used to select various transmitting and listening options including VHF and HF communication radios, nav aid reception, ground personnel, cabin attendants, cell call, and the public address system. There are 3 identical ACPs in the flight deck. The captain and first officers are located on the pedestal. The third is located on the overhead panel. The transmission keys are used to select the radio you want to use for transmission. A green bar illuminates on the selected key. Only one transmission key can be selected at a time. Pressing an illuminated transmission key will deselect the radio. An important point to remember is that the selection of a transmission key does not select that communications device for reception. Audio reception is controlled by selecting the reception knobs. Radios that are actively receiving are easily distinguished by the white band around the knob. Multiple reception knobs can be selected simultaneously. The reception knobs can be rotated to adjust volume for each communications device you are monitoring. You have 3 options for transmitting on the communications device selected on an ACP. By squeezing and holding the side stick push-to-talk selector and speaking into your on-side headset boom microphone or oxygen mask microphone. By holding the spring-loaded INT-RAD switch on the ACP to the RAD position and speaking into your on-side headset boom microphone or oxygen mask microphone. By pushing and holding the push-to-talk push button on a hand microphone and speaking into the microphone. You have 2 options for monitoring the communications devices selected on the ACPs. By using one of the 3 headsets provided in the flight deck, or by using the loudspeakers, each with its own volume control. There are 3 additional parties crews can communicate with through the ACP: ground personnel, flight attendants, and cell call. Should ground personnel need to contact the flight deck, they can do so by using controls on the external power panel located forward of the nose gear. When a cockpit call push button is selected from this panel, the mech light flashes on the interphone transmission key, accompanied by a buzzer. To answer, simply select the interphone transmission key and transmit using one of the 3 methods stated earlier. Remember, in order to hear the ground personnel, you must also have the interphone reception knob released out and listen through either the loudspeaker or the headset. As you select the transmission key, this action will not stop the mechanic light from flashing. Instead, the light must be extinguished by either pushing the reset key or allowing the light to time out after a short period of time. If a flight attendant initiates a call to the flight deck, the attendant light on the cabin transmission key flashes, accompanied by a buzzer. Here again, the light can be extinguished by pushing the reset key. This light also extinguishes automatically after a short period of time if not reset. Answering a flight attendant call is conducted exactly the same as answering from ground personnel. Cell call is a selective calling radio system which alerts the flight crew that a ground radio station requests communication. To receive a cell call, you must be tuned to the VHF or HF frequency on which it was sent. When a cell call is received on a specific radio, the call light flashes on the respective transmission key. It is accompanied by a buzzer. The call light continues to flash until extinguished by pushing the reset key. In addition to the communications radio and intercom reception knobs for monitoring various navigation radios are provided. The voice key is used to inhibit Morse code identifier signals when monitoring navigation radios. However, the recorded voice nav8 identifier is still heard. If the captain's or first officer's audio control panel fails, function can be easily transferred to the overhead ACP using the audio switching selector. This selector is usually left in the norm position. The captain's ACP has just failed. Select the audio switching selector to the Captain 3 position. An Audio 3 transfer memo appears. The captain can now carry out all ACP functions using ACP3. It is not necessary to move the plug-in location of the captain's headset. Likewise, if the first officer's ACP fails, the audio switching selector is placed in the first officer 3 position, and the first officer can then carry out all ACP functions using ACP3. In addition to the headsets provided, 3 out of the 4 oxygen masks on the flight deck can be used to transmit over the radio and interphone systems. The microphone in the aft mask on the captain's side of the aircraft for the 4th occupant is non-operational. The oxygen mask microphone is enabled as soon as the left door of the storage compartment is opened. Radio and interphone transmissions through the oxygen mask are made by squeezing and holding the trigger on the side stick or pushing and holding the INT-RAD switch to RAD. To disable the mask microphone, close the left door of the mask storage compartment and press the Press to Test and Reset button. This can be accomplished by properly stowing the mask in the compartment, or, if circumstances dictate, by simply closing the left door and pressing the Press to Test and Reset button. The Aircraft Communications and Reporting System, ACARS, provides two-way data link communications between the aircraft and a ground-based communications network. VHF-3 is normally dedicated to ACARS communications. Information is sent as a digital signal over VHF radio. This provides a link to numerous airline functions such as dispatch and tech ops, amongst others. Events such as off, on, out, and in times are sent automatically as they occur. If an incoming message is received, this ACARS message memo appears. Access to ACARS is accomplished by using the Multifunction Control and Display Unit, or MCDU. This provides access to the ACARS menu. Using ACARS, you can downlink and uplink information including flight times, performance data, in-flight progress reports, and weather information. Aircraft intercommunications and other cabin functions are controlled by 2 Cabin Intercommunications Data System, or CIDS, computers. Either CIDS computer is capable of performing all system functions. If both computers fail, you are informed by an ECAM message. Reset procedures for a CIDS failure are provided in the QRH. The CIDS computers control the following items: the PA system, cabin lighting including normal and emergency, cabin signs, call system, lavatory smoke indications, flight, cabin, and service interphone systems. There are 3 interphone systems. The flight interphone system provides for communications within the flight deck and between the flight deck and the pushback coordinator. The cabin interphone system enables communications between the flight deck and the cabin. The service interphone system provides the ability to communicate between the flight deck and maintenance receptacles located around the exterior of the aircraft. The service interphone system also allows for communications between all the receptacles to facilitate maintenance operations. The flight interphone system is controlled from the ACP. It can be operated in either a hot microphone mode or a push-to-talk mode. In the hot mic mode, the headset boom mic or oxygen mic is always active, allowing for hands-free communication. To operate in the hot mic mode, you must place the INT-RAD switch to the interphone position. Hot mic audio is heard on any flight deck headset and flight deck loudspeakers as long as the respective ACP interphone reception knob is activated. The hot mic feature is inhibited when the push-to-talk selector on the side stick or push-to-talk push button on the hand microphone is pressed. If a hot mic function is not desired, the INT-RAD switch should be centered. To operate the flight interphone system in the push-to-talk mode, the interphone transmission key and reception knob must be selected. You must then use the push-to-talk selector on the side stick or the RAD position of the INT-RAD switch to transmit via your headset boom mic or oxygen mask microphone. Flight interphone transmission can also be made using the hand microphone if desired. Flight interphone communications can also be heard through a headset plugged into the external power panel at the nose of the aircraft. The external power panel is the only external access to the flight interphone system. It is not part of the cabin or service interphone systems. To transmit and receive from this position, ground personnel only need to plug their headset boom mic into the flight interphone plug. Flight deck controls for the cabin and service interphones are located on the ACP. To use the cabin interphone, the cabin transmission key and reception knob must both be selected. Using the push-to-talk selector on the side stick or the RAD position of the INT-RAD switch allows you to then transmit via your headset boom mic or oxygen mask microphone. Transmissions can also be made using the hand microphone. You can monitor these two interphone systems using your headset or the flight deck loudspeakers. The flight attendants use the controls on the handsets located at each flight attendant station to communicate on the cabin interphone system. Ground personnel plug a headset equipped with a boom mic into any one of the external communications receptacles to communicate via the service interphone system. Since there are no additional controls at these receptacles, ground personnel have no method of signaling the flight crew of a need to communicate via the service interphone system. Service interphone operation is inhibited once the aircraft becomes airborne. A service interphone override push button is located on the maintenance section of the overhead panel. This push button is normally left in the off, lights out position. Selecting the push button on allows communication when the aircraft is on jacks and the landing gear is not compressed. The public address system allows you or the flight attendants to address passengers using loudspeakers located in the cabin. Handsets located at the forward and aft flight attendant stations are used to make PAs from the cabin. Pilots can make PA announcements from the flight deck using the handset located at the rear of the pedestal. This is accomplished by removing the handset from its holder and pushing and holding the push-to-talk push button on the handset. PAs made from the cabin can be monitored using the handset speaker. PA transmissions made from the handset are isolated from all other communication devices. There is no chance of transmitting through a VHF or HF radio. No inputs to the ACP are required to make PA announcements or to monitor them using this handset. You can also make PA announcements from the flight deck using the PA transmission key on the ACP. Announcements can be monitored in your headset and flight deck loudspeakers by selecting the PA reception knob. When the transmission key is pressed and held, the key currently selected on that ACP is deselected. You are now transmitting on the PA system from your headset boom microphone or oxygen mask microphone. The call system is used to signal the need to communicate between the pilots, the flight attendants, and the ground crew. To use the call system, pilots use the calls panel on the overhead panel, flight attendants use handsets at the forward and aft flight attendant stations, and the ground crew uses the external power panel. The calls panel forward, aft, and all push buttons are used to signal the flight attendants. To reset all of the cabin indications for a normal call, the flight attendant needs only to pick up the handset. If a need arises to urgently contact the lead flight attendant, the emergency push button should be used. Notice that both the white on light and amber call light flash when this push button is used. In the cabin, a high-low chime sounds 3 times throughout all cabin loudspeakers. Pink lights flash at all area call panels. Emergency call flashes in red on all attendant indication panels, this time accompanied by a flashing red light. To reset an emergency call, the flight attendant must first select the reset push button on the handset before hanging it up. The mechanic push button is used to gain the attention of ground personnel that are currently not on the interphone. An external horn sounds at the panel area for as long as the mechanic push button is held. The blue cockpit call light illuminates on the external power panel. Ground personnel use the reset push button to extinguish the blue light when they answer your call. A flight attendant has just pressed the captain push button on their handset to call about a routine matter. In the flight deck, the attending light flashes on the cabin transmission key on all 3 ACPs. A single buzzer sounds for a short period of time. You extinguish the attending light using the reset push button and answer the flight attendant call using the cabin transmission key and reception knob. Later, a flight attendant needs to inform you of a serious problem in the cabin and selects the emergency call push button on the handset. In the flight deck, the attending light flashes on the cabin transmission key on all 3 ACPs. A buzzer sounds 3 times. In addition, the call and on lights flash on the calls panel emergency push button. You extinguish the attending light using the reset push button and answer the flight attendant call using the cabin transmission key and reception knob. The call and on lights on the calls panel extinguish when the flight attendant hangs up the handset used to initiate the emergency call. To get your attention in the flight deck, the ground crew presses the cockpit call push button on the external power panel. In the flight deck, the mechanic light flashes on the interphone transmission key on all 3 ACPs. A single buzzer sounds. You extinguish the mechanic light using the reset push button and answer the mechanic using the interphone transmission key and reception knob. Call buttons used for signaling the flight attendants are available over each seat row on both sides of the aircraft. The blue lights illuminate on the area call panels to indicate that a passenger is signaling for assistance. If smoke is detected in one of the lavatories, the amber lights on all the area call panels flash. The cockpit voice recorder, CVR, records and retains the following: conversations on the flight deck oral warnings, radio communications, interphone conversations between crew members, and announcements transmitted over the PA. CVR operation is automatic. The Digital Flight Data Recorder, or DFDR, shares the same circuitry and is activated whenever the CVR is activated. Both systems are activated under the following conditions. For 5 minutes when the aircraft's AC electrical system is first activated, after the first engine start, and any time the aircraft is in flight. On the ground, they are automatically de-energized 5 minutes after the last engine is shut down. The CVR can be manually activated by selecting the ground control push button on the recorder panel to on. When this push button is selected to on, the blue on light illuminates and the CVR is energized. If the CVR is energized, pressing the CVR test push button accomplishes a test of the system as long as the aircraft is on the ground with the parking brake set. Pressing the test push button produces a low tone over the flight deck loudspeakers. If the tone is heard, the system test is satisfactory. When the first engine is started, the on light extinguishes, thus initiating automatic operation. The CVR erase push button enables you to erase the entire 30-minute recording. To erase the contents of the CVR erase push button must be held for at least 2 seconds with the aircraft on the ground and the parking brake set. An evac panel is installed to signal the cabin of an emergency evacuation. Flight crews can activate an emergency evacuation alert by pressing the command push button on the evac panel. This sounds an evacuation tone in the flight deck and cabin. When the command push button is pressed, an oral alert sounds, along with the evac flashing red. The oral alert heard in the flight deck may be silenced by pressing the horn shutoff button. The captain and purser switch allows the cabin attendants to activate the evacuation alert from the flight attendant panel.
That is incorrect. That is incorrect. That is incorrect. That is incorrect. That is correct. That is incorrect. 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 That is correct. That is incorrect.